Hello, it is Saturday the 16th of November and we're doing a crypto update. If you had told me a year ago that I would be looking at old school coins like BNB and Ripple and ADA and ZRX and Atom the end of this year, I'd have probably laughed. However, the change in governance in the United States to a more crypto-friendly government has certainly got people looking at really nice double bottoms in some of these old school coins that they still have bags of and wondering where they're going to go to and where their exit would be. I mean, the biggest news today really is Ripple, for the first time in 3 years, trading above and holding above $1, which is a really big deal, just because, Charles might get a job in the new Trump administration. So there are some pretty exciting things happening for people with wallets that they haven't looked at for quite some time. So let's take a look at them. It is the weekend. That means it's usually pretty quiet for Bitcoin and ETH and stuff, driven by ETFs where they're closed for the weekend and not much happening there. We're still doing it's just sideways price discovery in Bitcoin around that $90,000 price. It's a full moon. For me, that feels quite often stuff in crypto just gets quite intense and sideways, and that's certainly what we're seeing in Bitcoin at the moment. If we take on a lower, here's our 90,000 kind of price level, and what we're doing is very corrective price action. I wouldn't like to say that this has rolled over yet in Bitcoin. We're seeing 3 waves lower, 3 waves higher. I wouldn't be surprised at all if we roll over here to see another swing lower back to the bottom of this sideways range, maybe back to 85,000 if we were to do an equal measured move here like this. If this actually was the high today, that would put us back down around 85,000. This hourly 200 moving average and these kind of swing lows that we made back here, and that's a very kind of normal retrace. If we go a little bit higher, obviously we'll move it higher. Bitcoin loves to double top. I just think this is a bit of sideways chop, and what we're seeing is rotation of profits into other more interesting markets. So not much going on in Bitcoin, and ETH is still really underperforming. So one thing we have seen this week is some really genius marketing and Litecoin rebranding as a meme coin. So, and that's seen a really big weekly move, biggest weekly move in quite a long time in Litecoin. Let's talk about where we are, because you could say that from the high that we made in June a year ago, so that's 18 months ago from now, this was a pretty textbook 3-wave corrective move, and we are on our way up again. When you see a 3-wave move like this, you put your fib retraces on both swings. Look to see if the market validates or reacts at those fib levels, and if it does, then you can kind of lean on them. So in Litecoin, from this low to high, we did get a nice reaction at the 236 fib and the 38.2, and we have blasted straight through this 50%, which means if you're looking at Litecoin and to continue to trend higher, this 50% level here at 82.44 now becomes support, and this is a 61.8 fib level that we have just tagged this morning at 90. Now, sometimes between the 61.8 and 38.2, they call it the golden ratio zone, and quite often you can see sideways trading in this range, before we get going. So one key indicator that if you're going to pull all the way back to the 38.2 and retest this neckline down here would be if we broke this 50% level. So if we broke under here, we expect a bigger pullback to 75 in Litecoin, but so far so good. It's all looking really strong. So in terms of targets, if we measure the first swing off the lows in June 2022, like this, and project it from this low, our first target really should be 96. This is going to be quite a key level, and above 96 I think we see the equal measured move, and we continue higher to this big 236 fib here at 124. So we are at a pause level here in Litecoin. We could, if we look at what happened here in June, we could end up, if this is going to be a bigger bottom, we could end up seeing one of those golden ratio zone moves here and make a bigger inverted head and shoulders pattern before we continue higher. Targets then 96 on pullbacks and 124, but we are at a level where we might see a little bit of a pullback. If we continue above this 61.8 fib, obviously we keep going, and 96 is the next upside target. All good in Litecoin. Let's talk about the next one. Now I've got a whole bunch of old school requests, so I'm afraid if that's not your bag, you're going to have to be a little bit patient. I will look at some other stuff. This morning, the next one that we are going to look at is BNB. Now, these BNB got really unfairly penalized, and of course the market is now anticipating that BNB will make a comeback with in the United States. And so this is why a lot of crypto exchanges are doing really well. We could also say, when we look at this weekly chart of BNB from the high that we made in June, that this was a very nice three-wave correction, pull back to weekly moving averages, and here we are climbing higher again. Because this was a big three-wave correction, I'm going to look at fibs over both swings, but we need to say that we're in a bit range, we're in the region of those previous highs from 2021 that could make it a little bit tricky here. So from this high to this low, you can see these fib levels on this weekly chart were really well respected. This 61.8 level was really well respected, and here we are at the 786. That's important because when you make a pattern where you do a first swing to the 61.8, second swing to the 786, it's potentially a bearish Gartley reversal pattern, which is a trend continuation. So this would be 1, 2, 3. The key, with these fib levels, you kind of look at them as a step ladder, and you stay above each step to keep going higher. So we are not reversing, and we are holding trend support if we don't drop back underneath this 61.8 level at 598 in BNB. And so far this weekly is shaping up as a doji, which is just indecision, sideways. If we look at it down on the daily, you can see that we're holding this support really nicely. We're holding the daily 20 moving average very nicely. We've made a three-wave correction, or we're a little bit sideways here. So no reason to say that BNB has reversed, but we can say that we are likely to see, this is quite a bearish pattern, and we are likely to see a bigger move lower underneath 598. So hold on to BNB for now. We're trading sideways and coiling up, and we're looking for a breakout. So from this sideways range, and this 652, which is the 786 fib, is key. If we can close and hold above it, we've broken out and we are going to continue higher, and that potential bearish reversal pattern is negated by that move. So for now, we're in the middle of this sideways range. On the 4 hour here, our moving averages are all completely flat, which means that we haven't got any trend. It's a sideways range, and so you kind of need to make sure you're good on your entries by pullbacks and look for this to move higher, and the top of the range 652 really is your first target in BNB. See if we break out from here. Let's take a look at the next request, INJ. This is another one. If we look at this from the highs we made, this is an hourly chart, sideways consolidation in this one. If we look on the weekly in INJ, like so many of these coins, we are approaching a really dangerous level in INJ. Now, if we look at this from the high here, you can see that we have made a higher low. And one of the dangers to know whether have we reversed or are we going higher or not is to get above the weekly moving averages and to not make an equal measured move. So if we measure this as 1, 2, 3 up, 1, 2, 3 back, our key resistance level then becomes 27.38. We're still going up if we hold above this 61.8 level at 23. If we go down to the daily, just like BNB that we just looked at in a lot of charts, we are really holding Key trend support in INJ, which means for me we're still going higher. When I look at this final swing, never mind 3 waves, I can't count 5 waves. This looks like it's one move, which does point to more upside. So above 27, we can say that we should see, I like how we're holding above this daily 200 moving average here. This should point to more upside. It's just always a little bit of a risk that you're not going to do a bigger correction before you go. But above 27, I think 34, which is where this swing would be 1.618 of the first swing, should be the first target. And again, back to the weekly, back above this weekly 50 would be a really big deal. We shouldn't go back underneath it if we break above it, and we should continue higher. And if we put fib levels on and overlay them here like this, you can see this 61.8 that we're back testing is also back testing this 236 fib, which was support, then resistance. So it's holding above 22.8 in INJ really does point to more upside, but we've got just this tricky zone here at 27 to get through before we can say we've bottomed. And then 50% from this high to low, and that 1.618 target puts us up here at 34.33. So that would be the next upside target in INJ if we can break above here. So looking pretty good for quite a lot of these older school coins here. The next one we're going to look at is ADA. Now ADA, you can see ever since we made a bottom in 2022, this is a weekly chart, ever since we made a bottom, the key support and resistance has been this weekly 200 moving average. We've had massive fights over it in August 2022, in January of this year, and in March. Here we are testing it today, so it will be really significant if we can push through it and continue higher. I actually think we will, for a couple of reasons. One of them is, again, measured moves. If I measure from this low to this high in ADA, projected from here, you can see if I go down a time frame to the daily, you can see that we had a pause at this 618 level, which means we kind of validated it. And this level should now be support. We've just looked at a couple of charts where that's the case. And we continue higher to retest the highs in this 236 fib level at between 0.86 and 0.9 is the next upside target. So we can say as long as this holds a support, this is where we are looking for next in ADA. So if you've got a bag, you're looking at how we go with this. We really want to hold above 0.64, and we're looking for 0.9 next. And above, let's go back to the weekly, above 0.9, that's a really big deal. That's the 236 fib. Again, from the highs in 2021. And again, if we then do that 1.618 thing, the next fib higher, let's even take these off. The next fib higher, if we can hold above 0.8999, is 1.32. So I think the first time back we are likely to have a little bit of trouble here, but sometimes, you blast through and then it becomes support. So that's what I would be looking for next in ADA. Just don't be surprised if we see a little bit of a pullback here at this weekly 200 moving average. It is a really big deal. We've been fighting over it for a couple of years, and that's where the support is at 0.64. Okay, next chart we're going to look at, next chart request is ZRX. Now, let's start again with the weekly on this one. Let's have a tidy up here. Because we have been trading sideways in a pretty interesting range since the summer in this one. One thing about crypto is, when you start a move, the wave ones or the beginnings tend to start really slowly with choppy over kind of sideways overlapping price action until it gets going and, everybody realizes what's going on, and then it kind of goes parabolic. Now, do I think this one will go parabolic again? I don't know. I do know if we look back at this weekly 50 moving average again, that's likely to be trouble, and these previous lows and highs and the top of this sideways range that we are in ZRX, which comes in around 0.4 or 0.42. If we go down to the daily, I think it is looks, you know, for me it looks pretty good here, doesn't it? We're fighting sideways over this daily 200 moving average. The move that we made since the election has been really strong in this one. It's just that is likely with that weekly moving average to be a little bit of tough resistance. If we were to say, well, if we get above that weekly 50, where are we going to go? I would say the 236 fib from the high in March, which is the yearly high to low at 0.5. However, yeah, let's take a look at just this last swing lower. This is the 50% of that as well, isn't it? Whenever I'm wondering, you know, if the market is looking at the same fib retrace levels as me, I always look at the reactions. So if we go from the high here in May, we can see we've got a pretty good reaction at this 236 fib and this 38.2 double top, and now we're fighting over it. So this 50% retrace of this last sort of 5 swing lower would be quite normal, and that's at 0.42. And above 0.42, yeah, I do think we'll see that bigger 236 fib at 0.5 next in ZRX. But just watch out that we don't have a little bit of trouble at that 0.42 level, and that for me with this move today is my first next upside target in ZRX. Here's another old school coin, if I can find my chart. I've got so many charts and I'm scribbling on. We're going to look at DOT. Let me find it. Polkadot. Now, if we go to the weekly of this one, again, this is another one where really for a couple of years we've been kind of building a bottom in DOT. For me, though, this one is a textbook double bottom. So the low that we made in October 2023, we retested perfectly on that 5th of August low where pretty much every chart bottomed. And if I look where the first target would be, remember from this high to low, it's this 236 fib level, and that's at 5.5. And that's also, if we look left, you know, a pretty interesting support and resistance level. Above 5.5, we're going to see a bigger move. If we validate this fib by kind of reacting at it, we're likely to then have pretty good targets higher, 6.7 and 7.7. But I would say, because this is a double bottom, if we get above this 236 fib, we are at least likely to go to the middle of this range, which is 7.7, and then retest the highs all the way up here at 11. So Polkadot, this 5.5 level becomes pretty important. You can see on the daily here, it was a bit messy, but the first time back we did have a pretty strong reaction to it. What I want to see, you can see left here that it is a big deal level. If we can close, the next time we need to hold above it if we're going to keep going higher. So Polkadot is looking really interesting. Sometimes though we overshoot a level and then when we retest it, if we're going to do it, in other words, a bigger kind of A, B, C here, we might find that this time we test it, it's not quite such a happy move. So I'm watching. That would be the bearish argument. The more bullish argument would be if we can get above it this time and then this time find support from it, we are headed higher. So 5.549 is key bull bear line for me in Polkadot if this one is going to continue higher. Okay, let's take a look at some more OG coins before we move on. The next one we're going to look at is XLM. I don't know why I've hidden that one, but I think it might be here. Here we go, XLM. Another one. It's been a couple of years in the making in XLM, but here we are sideways at the lows, and this weekly 200, in this case the weekly 200 moving average is kind of the key resistance, because that's what we couldn't get above in July 18 months ago. What makes me quite interestingly bullish about this one is this 3-wave lovely pullback here. So worst case scenario, you know, after this 3-wave measured move, we will see measured moves from this low and we're going to project them from here. Now if we do that, so we measure from this low to this high, we are here sideways at this 61.8 level. Interesting support and resistance, pretty strong if we go all the way back at 0.15355. So if we can hold above this on a back test, right, this is our key level that we need to hold above if we're going to keep going higher. Then our next target is going to be this equal measured move up level up here at 0.2, and in the middle we're likely to, or we could possibly see a wobble at this weekly 200 moving average. So holding above 0.1535 is bullish for XLM to continue higher to 0.2 next, and a reversal there that goes back underneath this 0.15 bull bear line would be confirm this is just a corrective move. So that's going to be pretty key. If we look at this on the daily, here we are just testing it today, and on the hourly here we are just pushing above it. Today you can see on the hourly it was resistance early this morning. Now we're going to see if it's support or not, or if this is just a false breakout. So where we close on the daily in XLM is going to be pretty important. If we don't close above it and it's a false breakout and we see a little bit of a bigger pullback, then we kind of have to look at this as 5 waves and say the key trend support then would becomes this swing low. This is a daily down here at 0.125 and this daily 20 moving average, and we are a little bit at risk of a bigger pullback, and then we would be looking at a 1, 2, 3, 4 and then see if we can do another swing higher in XLM. So pretty key decision level for XLM today. Okay, a couple more old school. Let's take a look at Atom. This is a weekly chart of Atom. Really, you know, when you think about it, this used to be such a big deal. Double tops and double bottoms though, and this is, we can see here, we had a false breakdown, swing failure pattern here for the low. Here we had a double top. They are a big deal, and we broke these previous lows, and these are now kind of key resistance in Atom. This low here, 5.5 in Atom. So a little bit of support and resistance going on here, and you can see how, if we go down to the daily, how we've been reacting at this false break underneath, and then it was support. So this and the daily 200 moving average say, you know, we may have bottomed here if we can get beyond it. But again, the warning is always, you know, that this is just wave 1 or 2, 3, and this is a 3-wave corrective move. And if I measure from the low we made in September to this high, from this low, I have to say it's looking pretty good. We're sideways at this equal measured move level, but again, this back test of this 61.8 has been key support, so this is key. We're still pushing higher as long as we hold above 4.8 in Cosmos or Atom, and next upside, if we can break higher, would be 6.38. If we're going to do it, this is our first target, second target. If we can break above this 200-day moving average at 5.8, 6.38 and then 7.9, and then we can start talking about a bigger bottom. And if we zoom out, you can see that this second target up here at 7.9 lines up with the weekly 50 moving average, so that's also a pretty good target. And if I, again, from this whole, let's just actually look at this most recent swing, because I'm not convinced that's ABC. You can see that these line up with the fib levels as well. So our first 1.618 target lines up with this 236 fib level. So 6.2 becomes pretty valid, and this 7.8 becomes really valid because it's the 38.2, and then we'll, you know, look higher from here. If this is a bigger ABC, I'm not sure that it is, but anyway. Yeah, I'm going to leave it with those. So yeah, I think it looks good, and as long as we continue to hold above 4.8 in Atom, we are seeing a bounce, still in a downtrend. Whilst we're underneath this daily 200 moving average, we have to say that we're in a downtrend. But, you know, if we can get above it and hold above it, those are the targets. And I think it's looking pretty good for more upside. I'm going to go step by step. I'd really like to see if we can break out first before getting excited about this one. Okay, so next chart we're going to look at request is Peanut. So Peanut's in a bit of a correction. I am a little bit excited about this one, and I think we're in a little bit of a wave 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm not sure that Peanut is done going up, but if we look at this chart from the lows down here, we have got underneath the 236 fib, and we have bounced from the 38.2, and this 23. This is from on the MEX chart because it has the best history, and this 236 fib has now become resistance. So again, it's like climbing a ladder. My favorite corrections are 3 waves back to a 50% retrace. If we were to do that here, that would bring us back to 1.26. If I measure from this high to this low, project it from here, see if we're done. Do they line up together? Because that's always quite a good indication, and that does line up with the equal measured moves. So now in Peanut, we can say that if we break underneath this 1.6 level and get stuck underneath it, we are likely to continue lower to 1.24 in a bigger 3-wave correction. And potentially this kind of 1.55, 1.6 level could be support. You know, you don't always come back to that 50% level. Sometimes it's very common. 38.2 fib retrace is very common. So 2 support levels that I'm watching in Peanut, but I don't think that this correction is over yet. However, if we were to close and hold above 1.91, then yeah, I think it looks good. And then we could say perhaps we have bottomed and the next swing higher is underway. So 1.6, if we lose 1.6, we're likely to see a bigger pullback to 1.26. It may even come a little bit lower, down to this 61.8. But for now, those are the 2 levels on Peanut that I'm looking at. And unless we can recover 1.91, those I think are where we are headed lower to. Let's take a look at one that So Bert, which I have been trading, as you know, had a really nasty kind of drive-by. I call it a drive-by shooting when a chart just collapses. Very common in crypto. 88.6 fib retrace or a really deep retrace. It's recovering really well. I think it needs to calm down and set up again. So I'm going to not look at that one for a bit until it kind of calms down and we get another good setup in it. One that I did look at today, I bought a little, in the meme space, and I have lost my chart. In fact, everything's looking pretty bouncy, isn't it? Let's take a look at the one I bought today, which is called Ton. Okay, here's a weekly chart of this one. So when I look at a weekly chart like this is Ton coin. When I look at a weekly chart like this, when you see 5 waves up there, really clearly defined here, 1, 2, 3, and within that, this wave 3, this is very clearly 5 waves. Back to the bottom of this wave 4, which is here. I'm looking for this wave 4 to be over and the 5th wave to begin in this one. So we have pulled back to these previous wave 4 swing lows. We've pulled back to the weekly moving averages. We've done it in a very nice 3-wave correction here in Toncoin. So I'm watching to see if this one can break out above this daily 20 moving average and bottom. And it kind of looks a little bit bottomy, but of course, you know, there's always a risk it'll just be a 3-wave move and we haven't quite bottomed yet in this one. But what I like when I look at this on the daily, you know, we've looked above these daily 50 moving average before and then fallen back underneath it. But in this case, we've pulled back this daily 50 and found support, which kind of points to higher. So what about that measured move risk, this just being a correction? Well, if I measure from this low to high, you can see this weekly 50 moving average, and this resistance level is here at 5.56. So we can, for me in Toncoin, if we can hold above 5.56, next would be 6.2. But if in fact this is a bottom, this swing should be, this slightly higher low, should take us to the 1.618 of this first one, which would mean up to 7.2. And then 2.618 would take us to new highs at 8.93. So that's what I'm looking at. And I'm looking to see if we can get and hold above this 5.56 level. Now I've talked about it, of course it'll get spiked and everyone will get faked. But I'm watching this to see if this one can keep going higher for a pretty nice trade and a big wave 5 after this pullback. So there are some interesting charts out there. It has been a difficult week, but yeah. And most of these, most of the meme coins, unfortunately, this week are having really nasty pullbacks, and I've had some really nasty fake outs. But if you live by the sword, you die by the sword. They are, the ones that make you really nice money on the way up mean that they are also vulnerable to really nasty pullbacks. So, let's look at this just on the daily. As soon as all the way up in this, we have been riding these daily moving averages. And this applies to every time frame. As soon as you lose them, you're in a bigger pullback. And if you can learn to jump in and out in these really nice volatile markets, then you can do really well. The hodling sometimes can be a little bit more painful. So good luck. Let me know if there's anything you'd like me to look at. Have a great weekend, and